Welcome to another episode of the Compliance Alliance hosted by Knox Thomas. I'm Tom Chaldicott, and again, today we have got Mr. David Ely. So what are we going to be talking about today? Well, recently we wrote an article for our website talking about the requirements for e-stops. So they're particularly listed in EN ISO 13850 and our approach to them. So, Mr. Ely, do you want to kind of open? How did we open this? How did we come across this? Why are we talking about this right now?
Well, I mean, we're often on site looking at lots of machines at the same time, and one of the things that has come up in our pure assessments in particular in the past has been lots of e-stop buttons that have text on the background. Usually, it says emergency stop. Sometimes it's text in, one or two languages, depending on where the machinery is being manufactured. And we have been raising it as a non-compliance every time, which tends to result in a significant chunk in any report that is just e-stop labeling related non-compliances.
Yeah. And I suppose this sits under the picture of kind of why are we on site? What are we trying to achieve? Exactly. What are we trying to do? And how also do we want to be kind of aware of kind of the bigger picture of kind of health and safety?
Yeah. Because we're on site really to identify the stuff that people need to fix quickly, to actually materially reduce the risk of the machinery that people are using day in, day out.
Yeah.
And to do that well, I mean, clear communication is one of the things that we need to do. And if you get a report and a third of the stuff that's listed is stuff that actually is not a high priority, even if it is technically a non-compliance, then that raises this question: we may be raising this in line with a standard, but is it actually something that we should be raising that is helpful to our customers, is helpful to the operators of machines in actually getting home safely at the end of the day?
Yeah.
So I think that's what prompted the article that was recently written.
Yeah, and obviously we want to, we're typically delivering our pure assessment reports to health and safety managers.
That's true. Yeah.
Health and safety managers, I often say, is kind of, it's one of the most difficult roles within a business. Like often if you're often butting up heads against either people who are more senior than you or people who are kind of on the shop floor. Like there are always going to be difficult conversations and tensions in there. So the idea of then going to either those more senior because you need some money, or those on the shop floor and being like, oh, we need to change the text on the back of this e-stop, or talk about the color of the arrows on the face of it. My assumption would be that people aren't going to take you seriously, and then they're going to be a bit like, right, so what other necessities are you going to start raising? And like, we don't want to be part of that either.
No.
We don't want to, like, it's just unhelpful.
Yeah. I mean, all of those fixes, all of those control measures that we recommend, we recognize that they're going to be a battle on at least one front, probably two fronts. So it really comes down to which are the battles when we present a report to someone, which are the battles that we say, yeah, these are the ones you should be choosing.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be, and we recognise that it's going to be.
Yeah, and our reports are used as a very kind of critical item. Often people come to us. In fact, we delivered a report a couple of weeks back, and the guys we were delivering to were like, "Yeah, there's no surprise on here, Tom." Okay, so they actually know what their problems are and their kind of the discrepancies are. They know beforehand. But why have they gone, okay, but we want Knox Thomas to come in and help us? Well, they want some assurance and some clarity that what they're saying is actually correct, and what they're saying to, say, their seniors is correct. And we've actually backed it up because we've had an external independent body come in and effectively say the same thing. Great. Yeah. It's really helpful. Yeah. So suppose that we kind of get into the detail of what we're talking about then.
Yeah.
Well,
first of all, what does the standard actually say? So we've said we're not going to raise it as non-compliance. What standard is that based on in the first place? What does it actually say?
Yeah. So there's kind of two lines we're talking about, and we'll talk about one then the other. So again, we're talking about EN ISO 13850, which is for e-stops, and particularly, so clause 4.3.7, and this states, neither the actuator, so that's the button, nor the background should be labeled with text or symbols. Now, it goes on to permit a very specific symbol, which is a triangle with an exclamation mark in it, and that the background, wherever possible, should be yellow.
Okay. So so the actuator nor the background should have text on it. Is that "should" an important word?
That "should" is an important word.
Thoughts?
So obviously within health and safety, and particularly within standards, there's very specific terminology being used, and people have put a lot of time into regulations and a lot of time into standards, so they're very careful about the words they select. So there is a difference between should, must, and shall. So must is obviously prescriptive. It's a requirement, whereas the likes of should, it's more of a recommendation than a prescription. So I suppose there is a little bit of leniency there anyway. So, you could interpret that and be like, we should do this, but we're going to decide not to for whatever circumstance.
Right. Yeah. And does so we've spoken a little bit about the text on the background of an e-stop, but we also mentioned that the markings on the actuator itself, and the colours of those. Whereabouts is that from? Is there a difference there?
Yeah.
Two things.
So again, within the standard, what does it say? I've got it scribbled down in front of me. So when it is necessary to identify the direction of unlatching of the actuator or button, then this identification shall be the same or nearly the same color as the actuator. Now, some people might be like, well, if it's the same color as the actuator, how on earth do I understand that? So what you could get is you could have this impressed into the actuator. So you can see the difference between the unlatching direction and the rest of the color of the thing. So that's the requirement. Yeah, that's the requirement in the standard.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, why? Because that's the question. You go, these people have carefully written a standard. They've clearly laid out what they expect to be to have an actual effect on safety.
Yep.
What do you think the reasoning is behind that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they don't say within the standard what their thinking is or their reasoning is. Now, for the not having emergency stop written on the background, I think a sensible guess for why they would be against that is that sometimes you see machines with multiple languages or languages that simply just aren't in English, and that could maybe potentially cause confusion.
Right.
In the scenario where someone is trying to find an e-stop.
Yeah. And that is a scenario that you don't want any confusion.
Correct.
That's a serious spur of the moment. You need to actually act right now. You don't want to be confused.
Yeah, absolutely true. And then I suppose for the latching one, now I'm not going to say where this has come from, but a well-known kind of safety component manufacturer has suggested that the reason that for the requirement of the rotation marking on the front could be to avoid confusion between actuation, so pressing it, and releasing, turning the actuator. So they're suggesting that potentially someone could go, oh, it's an e-stop, maybe you turn it to activate it rather than push it. Now, I think that's clutching at straws.
Okay.
I mean, I was having a chat with a friend this morning who is not in safety, who I don't think has ever been in a factory of any description. And when I was kind of describing some of this to him, he knew exactly what an e-stop looked like. You see them on conveyors in supermarkets, at the airport. Like, what color are they?
It's a big red button. And I think it's probably an innate human tendency to see a big red button and go, I'm supposed to press that.
Yeah.
And press it quickly when I need to.
Yeah, entirely. I mean, I think it just comes back to why the difficulty is, like, why is this written into the standard, and what's the approach of the standard? And obviously we're talking about kind of, well, I suppose the answer to that is kind of personal responsibility versus kind of following exactly what it says in the standard.
Right.
And if it's the case that the standard can't stipulate who the user is, well, it's going to then start stipulating the requirement for the piece of machinery that the user is obviously interfacing with or operating.
And that's kind of the standard approach that we see a lot, isn't it? We see it's exactly that. You can't control the person using it, therefore you must just pile safeguards on to the machine itself.
Yeah.
Continue to pile those on until you've essentially dealt with any possible potential scenario where someone might possibly do something. And that's sort of it's a never-ending task to do that, isn't it?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And another one, or another standard that kind of creates a very good example of this is EN ISO 13857. So this is for reach distances, either over barriers or through apertures in guarding. The way the standard is geared is entirely to prevent intentional access to hazardous zones.
Yeah.
It's not accidental. So just to kind of set an example of that, any opening in a guard that's a slot that is over 20 millimeters, so like what's that? Like the depth of your thumb. The reach distance to the next or to the kind of moving hazard has to be 850 millimeters. That's longer than most people's arms.
Yeah, and that has to be 850 millimeters at 20 millimeters
opening. Yeah.
So if anyone out there has got an arm that is 850 millimeters long and is 20 millimeters thick all the way up, then I'm glad we've got them safe from this. But otherwise, it's an example of that multiplying safeguards against every possible imaginable and even perhaps unimaginable scenarios, because you're not necessarily focusing on the person using the machine and their ability to take personal responsibility for the task at hand.
Yeah. So one of the things that I often say, kind of chatting with, or when we're having kind of health and safety conversations, there's effectively two. What we're all trying to do is stop the accident happening. Yeah. We all want that, and we all agree on that. Now, the difference is how do you achieve that? Mm-hmm. So there's effectively two different ways. So 13857 is trying to do that by guarding things within an inch of their life and preventing any, almost unforeseeable event happening. The other option would be ensure that the people operating said machine aren't going to try and shove their arm through a 20 mil gap to reach a hazardous moving thing. Now, both of those responsibilities end up with kind of senior leadership.
Yeah.
But the difficulty there is one of them is very prescriptive, and you can very clearly go, this is exactly what I did. But it's really expensive as well. Like trying to design a machine that's to all these standards, trying to navigate all the standards, trying to then spend the time engineering all of that. Obviously, that's time spent in design and manufacture and not in production. So you're not using a machine when you're kind of doing all that. The other option is to employ people who have a level of responsibility and an ability to take on personal responsibility, and you can trust them not to stick their hand through that 20 mil gap. But both of those things are really difficult to do. Mm-hmm. This one here is difficult to do because it's expensive, but you could legitimately kind of follow the process and be able to see, okay, that's done, then that's done, then that's done, and that's done. Over here, it's potentially cheaper, so the amount of time required is potentially less. You could potentially use a machine that is maybe a little bit more dangerous, in kind of scare quotes. But the work required to identify people who are able to take on that degree of responsibility is obviously significant. So you've got dangers on both sides, and in both instances, the responsibility ends up with senior leadership. Because the other thing you want to be concerned about with employing people who are kind of high caliber, high competency, is it's not always who do you immediately employ, but you're probably going to entrust that, because they're probably going to get, promoted at some point into a position where they could employ someone. So you've got to ensure, as kind of senior leadership, how do you create a culture, and how do you create a significant kind of barrier or benchmark that the people within your business or joining your business, through them, you're not going to end up employing someone who is, for some unforeseen reason, and it feels crackers, going to intentionally put their arm through a small gap in a machine and get themselves hurt.
Which of those two, in the long run, ends up with an actually safer environment?
Yes. So, I mean, one of those, I don't know. In my article, I kind of proposed that one of those treats individuals like children.
Which one?
So the one that is the one that's well overguarded is treating people like children.
Yeah.
And the problem that you get there is you end up in this cyclical state where if we make things, and I saw this on site the other day actually, if you make things as safe as possible, so all risks are kind of mitigated and all unforeseen events are also mitigated, then people's kind of judgment and their ability to identify risks and spot them is going to reduce.
Yeah.
Because they're going to assume that stuff is just safe all the time. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you employ the people who are able to kind of identify risk, take self-responsibility, they're going to go, I'm not going to put my hand in there, and I'm not going to get hurt. So we were on site the other day looking at a piece of equipment that was manufacturing an item of food. Lots of it was guarded and very compliant. And then there was this particular item where there was a roller that was kind of moving up and down. It wasn't powered, but because of another action, it was moving up and down. And someone had their arm in it. There was a bunch of them kind of stood around looking at this thing because it was kind of in commissioning. And someone had their arm in. And I'm just like, I wouldn't put my arm there. And there's also some shearing hazards up here that I wouldn't want to put my hands near. Like they could take off a finger, not a problem. But I think it'd be a safe assumption that the reason that they kind of had their arms in there is because they're so used to guarding and the responsibility of kind of self-preservation being placed entirely on the employer that they haven't actually been able to see the hazards or the risks. Mm-hmm. I mean, fair enough, the shearing hazards were kind of hidden a bit, but if the culture there generally was like, okay, there's moving stuff, there's evidently going to be hazardous parts here, I should probably keep my hands away, they probably would have been able to spot the shearing hazards as well. There's like the large roller moving up and down. And if that is able to be kind of impressed upon people, that level of responsibility and that awareness is only going to grow.
Yeah.
Whereas in the other one, the awareness and the responsibility taken is actually going to decrease.
Yeah.
And you're going to, I don't know what you're going to do. Are you going to need more bureaucracy? Are you going to need kind of more prescriptive legislation to cover that? Because I don't know what the solution is over there.
No. Well, it's a bit like with children, isn't it? You know, you've got children and an oven, and the aim is not to have them continually being told they're not allowed to go anywhere near the oven.
Yeah.
The aim is to have a grown-up eventually who knows how to use a dangerous tool effectively, productively, and knowing all of the hazards that are involved, the hazards that are going to come up with the situations that aren't foreseeable in the, you know, the approach you have with a young child.
Yeah.
It seems to me like the situation that is going to, well, put it this way: if you are building safeguards continually and piling on more and more prescriptive measures, there is no way that there's no way, no matter how hard you try, that you're going to cover every possible scenario. It's not going to happen. But if you have people who have developed the skill, the competency, the ability to recognize hazards for themselves because they know their craft well, they know their machinery well, they know how to take personal responsibility, they've been training, they've been passing on that knowledge between one another. If you have that kind of person, then there are actually very few situations that have come up that they don't know how to adapt to and how to spot issues.
If they do, they can see them.
Yeah.
And they can go, this is a new scenario.
We need to actually consciously
here.
think about this.
Yeah. Who can I go and talk to and kind of navigate whatever this new hazard is that that has been identified?
Exactly.
I mean, I think about the kids. My son burnt some of his fingers the other day because he turned on a light, like a bedside lamp, and then evidently touched the light bulb.
Right.
Now, he's got some nasty blisters that are just kind of coming out. But is he likely to touch the light bulb again?
No,
he's not. And you could say the same thing about like a hob on the oven. Like if a child burns themselves on the hob on the oven, they've learned something. There's dangerous things here, which potentially means that like something bigger and something that's got a greater heat capacity they might think twice before kind of going near the really hazardous thing. So yeah, entirely. That kind of training, that personal responsibility. And there is, you want to be careful about when you do it, but giving people a healthy exposure to these hazards so that they can learn, so that they can mature, and they can use kind of dangerous things for good purposes. The machinery that we talk about is really dangerous.
Every powerful thing is.
Yeah.
Every powerful thing comes inherently with dangers. So of course, the machines that we're looking at are going to be really dangerous because they're doing really effective stuff.
Yeah.
But as with everything, what you really want is people operating that who know it.
Yeah. Yeah, entirely. I mean, I think that probably wraps up kind of the conversation quite neatly. So coming full circle then, as those at Knox Thomas, we're no longer going to be raising whether or not there is text on the background of an e-stop, whether or not the indicator or the rotational indicator arrow is the correct color or not. I think we've fairly assumed that people are able to identify what an e-stop looks like.
Yep.
Now, some people are going to potentially be thinking, oh no, but there might be some that don't know what an e-stop looks like. There needs to be some sort of instruction. Well, there is a point where I will, there are things that we would raise about e-stops.
Of course, I mean, e-stops are really important.
E-stops are really important. I mean, I've seen mushroom e-stops that are black before. Okay, that's not clear what that is. Totally valid. But, as our friend who's not in kind of engineering or manufacturing is able to identify that a big red mushroom with or without a yellow background is going to stop the machine. And that's the thing that I want to press and stop. And we want to keep people safe. And we want to aid all the kind of stakeholders, those with responsibility for health and safety in the business, the health and safety managers, those thinking about kind of maintenance and who's going to have to replace the parts. We want to enable them to do their job well, and we don't want to create distractions around debates, even whether there is text on the background or whether there's a white arrow on the face of the e-stop. So that's where we are.
Great.
So thank you for listening to another episode of the Compliance Alliance, hosted by Knox Thomas. I've been Tom Chaldecott, or I am Tom Chaldecott.
I'm David Ely.
Until next time.